watch the light leave their face. It's hard. And it's hard there too because you know you take a quick penalty lap and the last couple reps are going to be
oh, what? If you miss the muscle up, you have to do a penalty lap? Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, that's really cool, actually.
Where I thought they usually should, and pretty frustrating. And then the carry.
It's time for some straight up grunt work. How fast can you move some heavy object? Sprint carry is underway. Rich Groening taking off. He comes into the win in fourth place overall, just 32 points back.
How heavy is the bag?
Started out a little too slow, part of it on the carry. Made up some ground towards the end, but still like 15th or something not good.
Here, you want to switch?
Yeah, I'm almost done with this. I'm almost out.
Open. Shoot! Gosh darn it!
Okay.
Momentum stalled.
I like Matt Fraser a lot more.
Huh?
I like Matt Fraser a lot more.
Get one in the form of
He's definitely more interesting.
Yeah, I had to listen to his bullshit about how, you know, when I came in third CrossFit, I came back and I realized that, you know, I was just doing CrossFit and that had been my identity. And so I decided to get baptized again, and that's the only reason I do this is for him. Right? Right?
Just like...
Also, there's way too much in his wife's voice. See, it's just like that thing's on blonde. I've been God put me on this earth to be a blonde, and I just come in for it, man.
I go to hit 245 and catch it too far back.
Oh, that's
I
horrifying.
didn't make it. That's a lot of points on an event I should do well at. So Dave calls the first heat.
Maybe my protest sign would be "Fuck off, God" and proning
At that point,
in parentheses.
I belt off, put it on the clock, just kind of standing there.
I'm so proud.
Number 2 coming up. Who's in lane 1? Rich Groening.
Wow, that's really impressive, actually. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought there was going to be more than that. As a ladder of 1 reps.
Saw where he was relative to the field, and he walked to the next barbells, knowing there was still one more heat. But Rich is so strong and good at those lifts that he should have cleaned, stood up, and moved with a purpose.
I definitely remember Rich not making the final heat of the Queens. I was surprised.
I need to move on
When
from
I was
this.
walking off, I
I need to move on
I'm
from this.
working on it. Eat your damn food.
Your jaw is busy being dropped.
He wasn't himself.
So
He just looked like
eating.
Jim confident past champion,
But-
like everything was going his way, or he was just waiting on Sunday to make a big push.
Yeah, so just
It
shush.
looked like
The
he
most I
was-
can
I'm
probably
working on it.
probably do is just exit Netflix. You would have to log into Young Turks, and I would be helpless in that.
Except it automatically is.
Oh, okay. Well, now that you're up, I'll just be sure to remember that for next time. Take my food. Hey, where was my chips? Hey, you just. You just knew exactly how to get back at me for that.
Ready?
So I think I may have finally figured out the solution to the data plan problem. As in, there is a data plan that's specifically designed for live streaming, and that it's an unlimited data plan that is actually unlimited and
Cool.
not capped.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay. I guess, yeah, cool piece.
Oh, man. more thrusters.
More thrusters. Yeah. So it sounds scary. He's waiting.
Yeah, I know.
He expects to receive.
Well, the territory meal today was delicious.
Oh yeah.
Really enjoyed it. But I left you. It was beef and broccoli
Yeah.
with this like garlic aioli sauce and rice cauliflower.
Yeah.
But I left you the spicy pulled pork,
Oh, okay.
which I feel like would be more your jam.
That's fine, yeah. I can do the pulled pork. I'll look at that. So it's a plan. It's not cheap. It costs $140 a month.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Really expensive.
Yeah. But that's certainly a better value than paying $70 a month for basically just getting, 2 days or 1 day worth of live streaming, which is what the alternative was before. So twice as expensive for actually it being able to work.
Yeah.
Okay. So yesterday we've been talking about John Idol's show damage report. That's our live morning show. If you remember, you can get that live video anytime you want. If you're not, you can do an audio podcast of it. The damage report to you. I think we're trying to get to 10,000 followers on there, but we have. So we're done with the damage report, and we're never going to discuss it again.
All right. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. In all seriousness, we got a big show ahead for you guys. And then tonight on Rebel Headquarters, one of my guests is...
Oh, the green salsa is more spicy now.
The other guest is
I like it.
instead rational. In fact,
It's almost as spicy as the red sauce.
Okay, so both of those are going to be super fun guests. Let's get started. Anna, what's up?
all right.
I don't know how she knew. Maybe she just like saw that the name was Zach and then saw me came in, but Ursula knew that was our order.
Conservatives love going after AOC.
Like,
Representative Alexander
she saw me come in and immediately asked, "Do you want red sauce with that?" And she already had my bag packed up.
State of the Union was no exception. In fact, Peggy Noonan,
Yeah, they know who Zach is, and they know what Zach's burrito is. Though there are black beans in this and not pinto beans.
Israel was not there.
That's a huge what?
Israel was not there. It was that other lady.
Well, I ordered it properly.
She writes, and good-natured with the white
Well, the
jacket,
gal then that took the order also was this young high schooler with eyelashes that were maybe an inch long. And I know you're not supposed to judge somebody on their appearance, but that's a little out of control.
But sullen, teenage, and at a loss.
So, not spirited, by the way.
Okay.
She had fake eyelashes on.
First of all, when you say, I see some people on Twitter saying that translation of that is, I would like to...
I'm not offended by this.
I've never seen her there before.
So I'll ascribe it to other people. And
She's new and doesn't know.
So she's like, oh...
That she's a stupid teenage girl with eyelashes?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's what I feel like I hear you saying right now.
Alright, we got it. That's...
What I take from that is that she has much more important concerns than making sure that somebody absolutely gets pinto.
Does Ocasio-Cortez have to look spirited at all times?
You know what?
And I thought being
I was wrong. There are
spirited
pinto
was
beans
kind
in
of a
those.
young
There's
thing,
both?
But now you're saying she's young for not being
No, I think
spirited.
it's just pinto beans.
Some sort of teenager thing. So
Who the
they
fuck is
found
that?
every imaginable and non-imaginable ways to criticize her.
So when she's enthusiastic, she's young and inexperienced, but when she's serious, she's sullen and teenage. So no matter what, she's young and they hate her for it.
Yes.
Yeah, and also, I don't enjoy ever being told by anyone, man or woman, to smile, right? So how about I get to have whatever facial expression I want to have at any given moment, whether it's a rusty bitch face, or it's a look of enthusiasm, or just, a look of complete and utter disgust, which is the look I would have on my face if I were sitting there listening to this nonsense State of the Union address where the person who has divided the country more than any other president in U.S. history is calling for unity, right? So I would have a similar look on my face.
it's
used in the
not
right context.
thrusters.
Yeah, no, she comes with a heavy bag of sea salt.
Oh, equally as terrible.
So,
Well, this Wall Street Journal reporter, it's a irksome thing that the mainstream media tends to do. A lot of these publications, they have strict standards about what they can and cannot say, and they cannot appear partisan. But it's partisan implicitly. Like, you know, you can read it in the framing of how she's talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We know what your political stances are. So it's frustrating that they pretend to be neutral and like these arbiters of truth, but in reality, in the way that they frame things, it's super obvious how they feel. So,
to be fair to Peggy Noonan, she's a columnist,
Yeah.
right? And so she gets to have more.
She was
she's still doing that veneer of like, oh no, it's not that I disagree with Alexander.
Either Reagan or George Sr.'s speechwriter.
That you're supposed to have in Washington.
That's who she is.
Okay.
They're the etiquette cops.
I don't know how I just pulled that knowledge out of my butt, but
a certain way.
that's who Peggy Noonan is.
Even if you don't like the president, you have to be warm and spirited.
no, okay.
Okay.
There's a very specific group of politicians or people in the political world who don't ever get to talk about etiquette, decorum, or any of that. It's the Republicans, right? So as long as you're supportive of who's the president at this moment, right? As long as you're supportive of Trump, you don't get to talk about the rhetoric, the decorum, the etiquette of anyone else. You don't get to critique it, right? Because you can't just let the president say the things that he says and do the things that he does without any critique, and then go off and talk about, oh, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wasn't smiling enough during the State of the Union address. No, you have no leg to stand on.
And
it's
a
over.
sexist comment. I mean, I know she's a woman, but when, I think you were hinting at this, Anna, when people tell you to smile, it's usually men who are, I don't know, are passing you on the street. Trump supporters would say that to me when I'd interviewed them sometimes. It's a fun anecdote. But yeah, it really is men oftentimes who feel like they can tell you how to feel, how to look. They want you to appear more pleasing.
Yeah, so, and there is an uneven playing field, as we often point out on the show, where Trump can be the most surly, vicious guy there is on the planet and tell you that women are bleeding from wherever and attack them in unspeakable ways. But when you're at the State of the Union, you must be warm and spirited towards him.
No.
No, why do I have that obligation? I don't. And Republicans can consistently attack Democrats. Joe Wilson yelling out, "You lied," to Obama, and Ted Cruz saying that we're going to be stuffed into Hobbit homes. Louis Gohmert saying Obama is going to reconstitute the Ottoman Empire. Whatever madness, insanity that they have. They can come up with insane conspiracy theories about how Democrats have organized 99% of the scientists in the world to all lie at once about climate change. I mean, there are no rules in the Congress. No rules at all. But Democrats, you are constrained incredibly specific rules, including your
descaled the
right? So,
espresso
no
maker
deal.
today.
No deal. And when
Okay.
and
It was
that's
really
the
gross.
fun- it might seem like a fun little
Crap that was
story,
coming out of
but
it.
there is a core
And
here
then I
where
was gonna get rid of the
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez refuses to play by
booch.
Washington's rules.
but I fortunately looked at the hotel first to see how it was doing. It was not doing well. And the booch was doing totally fine.
So she
That's
also
Scobie.
Okay.
gave a
So I got rid of the
response
hotel
to,
and just left
Trump's
it.
State of the Union address,
Okay.
and did so on MSNBC.
Did you replace the hotel?
Rachel Maddow invited her
No.
on, so
Okay.
I want to play her comments
Because
and then
I don't know what.
The president was
What's going on with it?
unprepared.
Yeah.
I don't think that he did his homework. We've seen States of the Union addresses delivered by many presidents, Democrat and Republican. They almost always have substantive policies that are offered. I agree with Senator Klobuchar there that there was no plan. There was no plan to address our opioid crisis. There was no plan to address the cost of health care. There was no plan to increase wages. It was, I had to ask myself, is this a campaign stop or is this a State of the Union?
So that's a great point. Even if you agree with Trump, and some conservatives are also saying this, like, hey, we like what Trump is saying, but what's the battle plan? What are we doing? Because usually in the State of the Union, if you're unfamiliar with these, they lay out what their agenda is for the upcoming year. and they say, okay, now I think that, immigration is a problem, and here's what I'm going to do about it. Now, that's a rare situation where he has one go-to move, but it's at least a policy. I'm going to build a wall. That means care about the first 2 years, all of a sudden he needs a national emergency, but at least it has, like, some fix to it. Opioid, bad. What? What are you going to do about it? Well, forget about the opioid problem. We're going to talk about the pharmaceutical industry, the mill mills, and et cetera. No. If you could discern an answer, it was wall. Everything is wall. But are you going to put forward any legislation? And obviously Congress does that, but the president usually backs a piece of legislation or champions a piece of legislation, et cetera. There's no substance at all, and that's a critique not based on whether you agree or disagree with it. So Ocasio-Cortez clearly right there.
Yeah, and he's not the only one who's criticized him for lack of clarity, lack of policies. There are people on the right who have done so as well, including Rick Santorum, a huge supporter of Donald Trump's. So this is not coming from a partisan perspective. This is coming from an actual objective perspective. And he also lost his place in his speech on the prompter several times, which a bunch of people have caught.
Well, it seemed like an obvious attempt to humanize him in ways. So he talked about kids with cancer, he talked about cancer treatments, he talked about HIV/AIDS treatment, addressing topics that everyone can agree on, and that every president, Obama too, cared about these topics. But they were just really sideshows to his actual policy proposals, because maybe there's some internal polling that says that the American people think he's cruel, which is the reality.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the policy that he wants to champion the most is not a popular policy. Building the wall does not have the majority of voters supporting him. So that's something to keep in mind. Maybe that's why the speechwriters pivoted toward the anecdotal stuff, the heartwarming stories. And by the way, conservatives hated that as well, probably because they're heartwarming stories. But I don't know. Maybe I'm
you don't know. Of course that's why they hated them, right? They're like, stories about heroic Jews. Yeah, okay. Tell me when the Trump State of the Union is up.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to other critics, because I found some of this fascinating. A number of prominent right-wing figures had some pretty critical things to say about Donald Trump's State of the Union address. In fact, Rick Santorum was one of them. Now, for context, Rick Santorum has been very complimentary toward Trump. He's a pretty big Trump supporter. However, following the State of the Union, he had some pretty harsh words for the president's performance. Take a look.
This was probably the worst delivered speech I've heard Donald Trump give. He ran over his lines. He mixed up the way he delivered his punchlines. He would deliver a line and go to the next issue, and I don't think he even realized he was moving on to the next issue.
It wasn't a paragraph.
Someone didn't do a good job of breaking his speech so he knew what to do.
I didn't mean to shake it.
That was a problem. Now, where I don't agree with Jennifer is the president. You know how many things the president proposed on domestic policy tonight? Bill Clinton, I would sit through this speech, and it'd be an encyclopedia.
Can you turn outside, please?
Stacey Abrams, in 4 minutes, proposed 40 things. In an hour and a half, Donald Trump proposed 8 domestic policies. 8! The entire night.
Okay, so this is a weird topsy-turvy world where I actually completely disagree with him on Stacey Abrams, and we talked about that for our members last night. One of our biggest criticisms was that there weren't any specific policy proposals. But that's beside the fact. What's important here is what he had to say about Donald Trump's speech, which I was actually pretty shocked by. He hated it.
He's the guy named after the Gay Sex Act, right?
It might be a little bit.
Oh, right.
Right. I mean, this is an unimaginable sentence, but I agree with Rick Santorum. Look, we said it while we were doing the live play-by-play of the State of the Union. He ran in from one topic to another in a way that was, like, he was talking about cancer, and then he went to charter schools, and it was such a run-on sentence with no pause at all that you couldn't tell if the $500 million he was asking for was for cancer or the charter schools. But the one part I disagree with Santorum is, hey, somebody should have broken up the paragraphs for him better, etc. No, I'm sure they did, but he didn't practice the speech. You see people who do their homework and are prepared, understand that this is kind of a big deal, the whole country's watching. you might want to know what someone else wrote for you in that speech.
He's a one-pager kind of guy.
Exactly. This speech is way longer than a page, so he has trouble concentrating. I mean, I would love to bet anybody on whether he read it twice.
Good job.
If he's
a really good
look, in an ideal world, the president writes the speech, but nobody lives in that world. The Republicans don't do it, the Democrats don't do it, and they're all theoretically really busy, although Donald Trump has 6 hours of executive time, right? So, but okay, I'm not saying he needs to write it, but he needs to edit it. He needs to at least read it, maybe a couple, and deliver it a couple of times so that you practice it. Not because I need you to be a great showman, but because if you care about your side, you want to effectively deliver that message. But of course, the guy hates homework. He's a petulant child.
Yeah.
So that's why he was not prepared. So he's like, "Yes, sir, charter schools, whatever. I'm going to keep going here. I'm tired. But when do I get back to eating burgers and watching Fox and Friends?" So of course it's his fault.
Yeah, I mean, right before the State of the Union happened, there was a breaking news story from the New York Times that talked about how Trump was very unhappy with the speech because it wasn't harsh toward the Democrats enough.
Didn't have enough attacks.
What that signaled to me was that he was bored with the speech, didn't really feel passionately about it, and I think that really did come through in the way that he delivered the speech during the State of the Union.
Hey, you know, if you're unhappy with the speech, I got great news for you. You're the president of the United States. You can change it. You could order them to change it. You could edit it yourself. I know. Picking up a pen. Come on, right? But what do you mean you're unhappy with the speech? It's a speech you're giving. It's not like you didn't have time to prepare. It was delayed. First of all, you know when the State of the Union comes out. Second of all, it was delayed by Nancy Pelosi. You had all the time in the world to craft it in any way that you like. And why was he unhappy, by the way, on the substance? Because they emphasized unity. They talked about what Emma mentioned earlier, which is, hey, AIDS, cancer, we'll try to make you look human for once in your life. He's like, I don't like it. When do we get to flex the Democrats, right?
Yeah.
Well, that would defeat the whole point of your supposed unity speech. And by the way, why does he want unity? Because, as he explained, and we told you the play-by-play as students, he started talking about unity, and then, of course, he got to the punchline, which is, now, if we're going to be unified, you can't do any investigations of the president.
Well, yeah, now unity is convenient for him because he's lost the chamber of Congress. So that's when you hold unity onto the table, say, this is what I want so I can, we can give more tax cuts to my wealthy friends and to myself.
So one of the other conservatives who did not like all the unity talk was Ann Coulter, who Trump apparently has unfollowed on Twitter. And it might be because she's been coming after him pretty strong, pretty aggressively. And so here's what she had to say. Golden beaches of California. This was the lamest, sappiest, most intentionally tear-jerking State of the Union ever, as opposed to the fear-mongering that you love so much. Please fire your speechwriter, Donald Trump. And she also said, 45 minutes in, we got 30 seconds on the wall. You better be breaking ground tomorrow. She's so sad. She's such a sad, sad person.
But I actually think that Trump's sadder because here's Ann Coulter giving directives to the president. And before, he was largely taking them.
Yeah.
And then when people caught on to the fact that he was taking his orders from Ann Coulter, then all of a sudden, as usual with a petulant child, he got all, through a temper tantrum. Oh, yeah, I'm going to unfollow you. Like, what president sits around unfollowing people because their feelings were hurt?
No, I know. But Jake, she wrote a book titled In Trump. Yeah. Well, she wrote a book. That was the title of her book.
She's the biggest opportunist in media. I mean, I don't really think it's close, but I also think this is representative of something larger that's happening with Trump, which is the fact that he's been unable to deliver on the wall. It is the first major loss for him and for his base because he's planted his flag here. He's said the wall is incredibly important. He's been unrelenting on it, and there seems to be no way that he's actually going to be able to make it happen. And she is a constant voice in his ear or on his tweet feed saying, the wall needs to be built, the wall needs to be built. Tweet feed, Twitter feed. But yeah, she is a representative and indicative of his broken promises to his base, and he cannot stand it. And for that, thanks Ann Coulter, because it's clearly triggering him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a little bitter tweet to compliment Ann Coulter on that. But.
All right, well, this is the part of the show where I move on immediately. So there's one final part to all of this that I want to get to. Ben Shapiro shared his fast-paced talking points about the State of the Union address that happened last night. And, well, thank you. Anyway, so during his commentary, he felt that it was important to bring up what he perceives as disrespectful behavior by Democrats. Take a look.
You can see in the background, if you're watching this, that Nancy Pelosi is ruffling through sheets of paper, which, by the way, is kind of rude. I mean, just, if a Republican had done that while President Obama was president, there would be endless talk about how condescending it was.
Really?
Okay, so she was shuffling papers behind Donald Trump, and I don't know what she was doing. I was amused by it. I didn't really think it was that big of a deal, and you should be paying attention to the president's speech, right? Who cares what Nancy Pelosi is doing behind him? But nonetheless, I do want to...
Can I just say, before we move on to the hypocrisy, which is going to be super fun, I don't want, if you didn't watch State of the Union, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. It's not like the entire time that, for the hour and a half that Trump, the interminable speech that Trump was giving, Nancy Pelosi's like, no, she did that once, and we didn't know that around play-by-play, which you should always check out when there's a political event.
Yeah.
So, I said, and at one point she wrote notes, and I said, man, I'd love to see what notes she just took. And that was it. It was a short period of time. She took a note, she shuffled some papers. Can you believe it?
Okay, I think you're a big hypocrite right now, because if anybody did something like that to Obama, everybody would be really upset about it, the media would talk about it, they wouldn't let it go, and they would think it was super disrespectful. Except here's the thing. There were some individuals...
Weird how smart you got there again.
Yeah, wow, you broke the IQ. So, there were Republicans who were incredibly disrespectful to President Obama. One of them was a man by the name of Joe Wilson, who did something during Obama's State of the Union in 2009. If you don't remember, I can help refresh your memory. Take a look.
The reforms I'm proposing would not apply to those who are here illegal.
So again, that was Republican Joe Wilson yelling, "You lie!" in the middle of Obama's speech.
Because Republicans are so respectful, and they're filled to the room with decorum. And that's why Ben is pointing it out, that the Democrats are the ruffians, the barbarians of the game, with their notes and their folders.
Which is why I support Donald Trump, a man who swears every other word and can't go a tweet without a typo.
Yeah, so when Donald Trump talks about grabbing women by the genitalia, well, that's decorum. That's decorum, okay?
Yeah.
Shuffling papers. Oh my God, what has this country come to? This is just absolutely outrageous. This is why we need the insight of the intellectual.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm really excited.
I've never felt one so great about that.
Pelosi's approval rating has been really bad for a really long time, but Trump and hating on it has been
Stupid
very good
Bexel,
for
shut the fuck
business
up.
for Pelosi. Her approval
Yeah.
rating
They
has
will
been
shut
high,
their
that
darn mouth.
hasn't been at for a really long time.
glass.
People are making news about her.
Door
She's
was
cool.
open.
She's with the
There's just,
AOC
like, the gate
crowd,
and Jack was
right?
barking at
And
me.
I mean, I know, not really, but truly, there's been kind of a renaissance in her public image, and
Just Jack
they
barks at
can't
you coming up
stand
the
that.
door.
So that's part of why Ben Shapiro is getting triggered by paper shuffling and doing this, which shouldn't bother anyone at all.
So I think you make a really great point. I do think that they're concerned about Democrats and their newfound ability to fight back. I think that's really at the heart of what's going on, because the Democratic Party and establishment Democrats have been hating on Trump, right? That's never changed. What did change was that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer finally decided to fight. And they finally started to use the same type of strategy that you would typically see on the Republican side. And so I hope that it's a lesson establishment Democrats have learned, right? It's not simply, oh, well, we're hating on Trump, but we're going to be...
No, they haven't learned it. They're just doing it right now.
They actually fought back, and it worked. It worked. So I think people on the right are concerned about that. I'm just hoping people on the left have actually learned a lesson from it.
Yeah, and finally, we get to the difference between the right and the left in terms of critique of national leaders, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. So for Obama, our critique was that the Affordable Care Act should have included a public option that would have made prices a little bit more affordable. We were right about that. He should have done Signature Jones prices, he should have done average journalists. Their critique was was he shouldn't have put mustard on a burger, he shouldn't have worn a tan suit, he shouldn't have held a coffee while saluting the Marines. Meanwhile, Trump's bowing to North Korean generals, but that is not an issue for them. Now, on Nancy Pelosi, the critique is that she's actually quite conservative in protection of the status quo. Yesterday, we did a story about how her aides are going out and telling healthcare companies, don't worry, we're not going to do Medicare for all. That is a very important topic and monumental policy in this country. And we're trying to correct the record of the wrong impression that the mainstream media has that Nancy Pelosi is some sort of progressive champion because she did the bare minimum of standing up to Trump when he is deeply unpopular. Meanwhile, the Shapiro intellectual argument on the right is she shuffled papers. So, and apparently they were upset about the way she clapped at Donald Trump. And by the way, some on the left were excited about the way she clapped at Donald Trump. So
I don't know, Jack. I feel like you're really grasping straws here with your argument. You're strawman argument.
That's right. That's why there should be more money in politics, and the donors are always right.
And they pay me this stuff.
Okay. So I guess to Ben's argument overall, I have this last thing to say.
We leave you with that as we go to our break. When we come back, though, we are going to talk about Donald Trump. Yes, he's in the news still. Oh, New Mexico. Governor of New Mexico with a can of whoop-ass. Okay, we'll give you the details on what she's doing and more.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Let's read some comments. Go to the members first. TYT.com/join to become a member. NPC says he talked about cancer and HIV, but has taken away the ability to afford for health care to provide for that care. And that's exactly right. I mean, we made the comment during the play-by-play that while the story is a 10-year-old girl financing her own cancer treatment is heartwarming and touching, etc., 10-year-olds shouldn't have to finance their own cancer treatments. We should have health care for everyone in this country. So that's why we believe in Medicare for all. And Trump proposes to do nothing about that. Joy writes in, as loathsome as Pelosi is for being an establishment hack, the criticism against her and AOC's behaviors by the right wing are a huge sexist backdrop during a patronizing campaign State of the Union speech by a serial cheater and assaulter. Here, totally agree. We're always stuck in the position of saying somebody like Pelosi is wrong on the substance, but the attacks against her from the right wing are almost always unjustified and oftentimes tinged with significant sexism. So now on to Twitter, MacGyver505 says the one and only Emma Bigler is on TYT today. My just got exponentially better.
Aww.
That's awesome.
Thanks so much.
There will be wit writes in, LOL, a conservative talking about a politician being rude. Does he know Trump is president?
Yeah, for real.
And now finally on YouTube Super Chat, Gerald Butler, very nice of you, Gerald. Thank you for participating in this way. And he said, please keep on keeping the truth. Love you all. Right back at you, brother. So speaking of the truth, Pitchfork Economics with Nick Hanauer is one of our podcasts. You guys got to check this out. I just think it's a terrific podcast. And in the latest episode, he talks about regulation and how the idea that regulation keeps down growth is total nonsense. And Nick is one of the more successful people in the country. He was the first a non-family investor in Amazon. He sold his company for billions of dollars to Microsoft. So it's not like he doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, he's an actual successful businessman as opposed to Trump. And so he listen to the podcast. It gives you an excellent idea of what's real in economics and what wealth creation and how to improve the economy from a progressive perspective and an actual honest perspective, a real perspective. And while you're checking out our podcast, check out No Filter. That's Anna's show. Another great podcast, and Damage Report by John as well. And by the way, the Jimmy Dore show too. So lots of great podcasts for you guys. TYT.com/app is a good way to get all of our podcasts, but obviously wherever you get podcasts as well. All right, Anna, what's next?
All right. The governor of New Mexico is pushing back against Donald Trump's policy of taking active duty troops and sending them to the southern border. Now, earlier this week, the Pentagon had announced that it would send an additional 3,750 active duty troops to go patrol the border, even though they're not supposed to do that. And And so now the governor, Michelle Grisham, is essentially sending them back, saying, no, I don't want them in my state. This doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Here is her statement. New Mexico will not take part in the president's charade of border fear-mongering by misusing our diligent National Guard troops. So she is sending them back. However, a small contingent, around a dozen guardsmen, will remain in the southwestern corner of the state to assist with humanitarian needs in a remote corridor for cross-border immigration. She also mobilized state police to assist local law enforcement. Governor Grisham also directed 25 troops from other states, including Arkansas, Kansas, Kentucky, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Wisconsin, to withdraw from the New Mexico border. So she has really branded herself as someone who wants to fight back against Donald Trump, and specifically Donald Trump's law. In fact, I have a fun ad to show you that kind of helps illustrate that point. Let's take a quick look at that.
I'm Michelle Lujan Grisham, New Mexico's 49th in employment and 50th for schools. We gotta bust through some walls to make changes.
Oh my God, I love her.
Partnerships to rebuild our infrastructure. We need more apprenticeships and skills training. And we have billions in the permanent fund to invest in schools and small businesses. And here's what I think of Trump's role.
Really went for it. Like, bless her heart.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, was it?
She's a good guy. Like, I'm on her side, for sure, especially on this. That ad, though.
It's like if one of my
No, I
mom's
liked
friends
it.
tried to make an ad, right? Like, it's just like physical walls running through it and the way she scampers. I really liked it.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
It's not for me, it's for other people.
It's
It's
cute.
okay.
Now, this is a good debate on the air. So first of all, an analogy I use about my dad all the time is that he won't bother trying to find a door. Like, you put him in a room and he will just go right through the wall. Doesn't care. So that spoke to me in that sense. Second of all, I kept trying to figure out, when did they do an edit? Did they do a cut, or did they do really thin walls and she actually ran through them? Even more fun.
I think she ran through them.
Yeah, it looked like very thin drywall, but it, I
Right.
mean, it had the powdery stuff.
You can totally go through it,
legitimately
yeah.
drywall.
Yeah.
See, now we're having a conversation.
Thin drywall, obviously, because thick drywall, like you'll really maybe hurt yourself. I don't know. If
No,
you've tried it.
I never ran through a wall,
Yeah, no, I've done construction. Yes, you will hurt yourself.
Did you ever hang drywall?
Of course.
Did you ever
That's
run?
really impressive. Drywall.
Oh, please.
Okay.
In the post game, I'll tell you all the different
I mean,
things I've
quarter-inch
done.
if it were quarter-inch, you can go right through, but it didn't look like it was quarter-inch drywall.
So anyway, one day the Republicans.
This quarter-inch really is like, it's like freaking paper thin.
Look paper to me.
I mean, Trump.
You should replay it.
Exactly. Anyway, I love how she's standing up. So my favorite part was two things actually. One was
Don't worry,
ordering
babe.
all the other states out. She's
It'll be.
I
it'll be
literally
over
just
in
still
the-
feel like every breath is like
Oh.
Nothing against you guys, but you gotta go now. Okay. So.
kind of painful.
Then the second
It's
part
not
that I
supposed to
liked
feel like that.
was that it was a smart policy.
It's not a
So she's
fibro
like,
thing?
look, actually, in one
Maybe it
corner
is.
of the
I mean,
state,
it's not actually
the
people.
southwestern corner
Okay.
in Hidalgo
But I-
County.
You having an asthma
She's like, we do
attack?
have an
No.
issue, and
I just
we
definitely
need more
still feel
humanitarian
it.
assistance. So she kept a dozen guardsmen there and told the state
Maybe it is fiber, I don't know.
police officers to help.
But this is
the
definitely the
local
first time
police
I've been
officers
able to push
there,
as
because people are coming up to
far as
close
I did
doors,
without
etc.
panicking.
She's like, there we have an actual issue.
See, that's
and
what it
we can
is.
Deal with it in a
This is
an
normal.
intelligent way.
It might be.
And so I'm gonna
It's
use
probably
the
not your
resources
lungs
I have
themselves.
to
It's
Right,
like
no, yeah.
where we have
I
those
feel it's more like my
muscles,
throat.
optics.
Your throat?
And the
Yeah.
Republican governor had ordered the National Guard, their National Guard, when he was in charge last year.
Like,
to
almost
go
like I'm
along
losing
with,
my voice.
Trump's propaganda. She's like, and I'm not doing your marketing gimmicks, right? I'm running through walls, and I'm actually taking care of real problems.
And yeah, so there are still a lot of federal troops there, right? Which is pointed out in the article. And it's crazy that federal law prohibits the use of active duty troops for law enforcement, but we completely disregarded that. So Trump is in violation of the law, technically, when he's sending these active duty troops down to the border. But presidents have done it in the past 12 years, according to this article. So I just find it crazy how we've decided that some illegal actions are totally fine because the president does it. I mean, under Obama, NSA spying too. But it's just bizarre that it's something we just agreed upon.
Yeah, look, I agree with you,
I'm done
but
with the chips.
I think the way in which Trump uses members of our military as political props is unprecedented, right? So Trump doesn't do it because he genuinely thinks there's an issue at the border. He does it to paint this narrative of a disaster, a crisis at the border, something that our military needs to get involved in to protect national security. Now, we know that that couldn't be further from the truth. These are individuals who are coming into the country seeking asylum. They're fleeing violence in their own countries. Now, if you want to have a debate about the economic strain that puts in the country, that's one thing, right? But what Trump is doing is painting these people as dangerous criminals who are coming in to murder everyone, and that is just not the case, period. So, all right, let's run through the next story the way she ran through that drywall.
All right, let's do it.
Strong. Actually, you know what? I just forgot. We do have to take a break. Let's take that break, and when we come back, a pretty explosive story regarding
Not very
Trump's
drywall,
inaugural
break
chair, and how he possibly used one of his companies to get favors from Trump, and how he might be investigated. That's a terrible tease. I promise you it's a good story.
Yeah, it is, but look, I'm going to throw one of my curveballs there. I'm known for the heater, but I got a lot of curveballs. If you watch regularly, you know that. I got one on this story. So let's see if we have a disagreement as fervent as the one we had about the sheetrock. All right, we'll be right back. All right, back on the Young Turks. Let's do just a couple of comments here. Jan Brasky says, was the New Mexico governor getting primaried by the Kool-Aid man? That's funny. You guys are probably too young to remember, but the Kool-Aid man was Ron Wallace. Dan, you remember? I can tell you.
No, I remember. I don't think those ads are really that old, unless maybe we're just getting old too.
No. Okay, no. Emma's actually young, so I
No, we're getting old too.
Right?
No, you want to play? Yeah.
Oh, jeez, you want
You
to
know I'm
play?
always down to play.
Okay. I don't want to show the pictures behind you. I don't want to be that disrespectful. Anyway, Dan, either sign Dan or sing Dan. Anyway, thank you, Dan. Because he writes in, just signed up for TYT membership. After 10 years of watching, I own a restaurant and have you guys on every day. I get a lot of heat for putting politics on, but I have a platform, and I'm going to spread the hashtag progressive.
The guy watched them for 10 years and he now just subscribed.
So, if you're in a similar situation, you got a restaurant, you got a bar, you got any kind of place where you can put up some programming, put up the Young Turks. You can get it from here, or you can get it from YouTube, our site. You can get it from YouTube TV. If you're on local television in New York, RNN, in Washington D.C., WMDE. So turn that channel, Young Turks on 7 to 9 p.m. on those local channels. And put us on. Fly the colors. Love it. And thank you for signing up to be a member. And by the way, if you're a member, I haven't mentioned this in a while, but you can also upgrade too. That's another way to support the show. tyt.com/upgrade, I believe, is still around. And because there's different levels of membership, you can still get a gift. And then finally, if you like something that we're saying, tyt.com/yes, or if you're on the site, you just see the blue yes button right next to where you watch the show. Just throw something in there. Every part helps. We've got to build a rock solid home of progressives here for you guys, especially as the campaigns are going on now. Okay.
I finished that Archangel.
Earlier this week, we learned that federal prosecutors
You watched it all?
looking into
Yeah.
Donald Trump's inaugural committee. Now, very few
I've forgotten.
details are known at this moment.
It's absolutely
what
ridiculous.
They're particularly looking into what are the issues with the inaugural committee. But recently,
I thought we stopped because we hated it.
Well, no, I had watched it before. So I was then like trying to remember what happened and how they got to wherever.
Barack, who was Donald Trump's inaugural chair. Barack also serves as the chairman for this investment firm, North Star.
Well, I figured you would
now,
be
this is all
upset.
important because the memo obtained by ProPublica gives us an idea of the strategy that the company, the investment firm, had in mind while dealing with Donald Trump and its other connections. So I'm going to read you some of the information that we know from this memo. So Colony North Star, the investment firm founded by Tom Barack, planned to use its connections to capitalize off of Trump's proposed investments in infrastructure. So we all know that Donald Trump claimed that he cared quite a bit about improving America's infrastructure. He talked about it while he was running. He didn't really do anything about it at all until last night during the State of the Union, where he claimed that he cares about the infrastructure again. But he hasn't actually done anything yet, and anything that he has proposed relies on privatization, so privatizing infrastructure projects. So that's important to keep in mind as we go through this memo. The colony memo shows how the company was positioning itself to take advantage of Barack's relationship with Trump and foreign officials immediately after the president was sworn in. Barack hosted a chairman's dinner during inaugural week with his own private list, which included business people and foreign dignitaries. Now, I'm going to give you more details in just a minute, but there are two issues here, right? So the first issue is, all right, is he lobbying here, and is that okay? And the second issue is, all right, what's the involvement of these foreigners? Because remember, foreigners are not supposed to donate any money to the inaugural committee. They're not supposed to take part in that at all. So could that be part of the investigation? I don't know. No one knows at the moment, but these are the questions that are being raised as the story develops. The president was sworn in. Again, we're going back to what the memo said. During the campaign, the president promised he would rebuild America bridge by bridge and road by road. While the plan is encouraging and highly needed, the U.S. government does not have the necessary resources to mount such a campaign on its own. Colony North Star can spearhead an operation that contains the external resources required to fulfill the ambitious infrastructure plan being supported by the Trump administration and leaders in the U.S. Congress. The key is to strategically cultivate domestic and international relations while avoiding any.
So the reason it took longer
again, these are
is they closed the bridge in both directions again at 4.
Obtained by ProPublica.
If the government can't afford to invest in infrastructure, that is a problem. Maybe you should give a $1.5 trillion tax cut, which saps the government of resources.
After additional concrete of saving area fell on the deck.
Inaugural committee.
Yeah, so
there was a half an hour because they reopened it again at 4:30. So there was a half an hour just complete.
There were foreign donors giving money to the committee. Yes, that would be a crime. But that's an if. So
that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have two thoughts about this. That might be a little.
Because there was a period where it's like, oh yeah, nothing really happened. But I was on the phone with Edwin for an hour actually, and so that distracted me.
It turns out that it's a crony of the president who wanted to.
That's the most intense picture I've seen. Other pictures were just like one rock.
Now, do you think that all the people who donated to
you don't teach tomorrow, do you?
Yeah, I do.
Committee of Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton just did it for their health? Am I saying every one of those guys wanted $1 trillion contract? No. But did some of those folks want favors from the president? Of course they did. And that's
so they better fucking fix it by the morning.
Corruption 101. Am I in favor of it? No, I can't.
So okay.
Fight against the most on this show, but the establishment's disdain for Donald Trump has gotten them to actually do some work for a change and expose things that actually happen all the time. So I like that they're exposing the story. I just don't want you to think that Trump's the only one who's ever done this.
Well, yeah, it seems like Rick Gates and the fact that he's spoken to Mueller has influenced this because Rick Gates was involved with this firm, and that's why maybe this is coming out now. I just think this is part and parcel of the Trump administration's the worst aspect of it, which is this complete blend of industry and corporatism with the government and the kind of free-for-all. So while this may be something that happened under Obama, under Bush, under Clinton, it's more egregious because it's a part of the whole of the corruption as opposed to just one instance of it.
So here's the thing that I'm curious about, right? The argument in the memo is, well, the U.S. government doesn't have the resources necessary to carry out this very ambitious proposal by the president. And so this is a great opportunity for our company to jump in, right? So jump in with what resources are they talking about, right? And they specifically mention their international resources or connections. So these are things that matter. So you're right, Jason, that the corruption is business as usual in the country, but I think what really stands out about this story is the fact that Rick Gates is involved, right? And more importantly, the foreign issues that Donald Trump's campaign had. Okay, so let me give you the connection to Rick Gates. Let's go to graphic 16. Person familiar with the creation of this memo said it was written by Rick Gates, who was deputy chairman of the inaugural committee and was then hired by Barack as a colony consultant.
And he's, of course, now pled guilty to other crimes and cooperated with Mueller. Look, I don't know why there were ambassadors at the meeting that Tom Barack put together and what the foreign connection is. Well, how does it give them, did they build infrastructure in Kuwait or something and he's going to use that? Why does he care about, is he going to raise money, not necessarily for the inaugural committee, but for his company from foreign sources and then use that to get the contract here to build infrastructure? I don't know. If he is going to get money from foreign sources, there's nothing illegal about that. But so that part we'll have to see if the investigation covers anything real in that sense. So I'm definitely not prejudging it, as you can tell here. But to me, the most important issue here is what they were going to do with infrastructure. Instead of having the government do infrastructure, as we did in the 1950s, which was incredibly successful, Dwight Eisenhower administration, a Republican administration, helped to build the highways, the bridges, etc. in this country, made a giant difference for us, improved our economy dramatically. But the idea that the American government can't build roads and bridges anymore, it's preposterous. Well, okay, then how are we doing the military? We've got, what, $750 billion in the Defense Department budget? So I guess we should wrap that up because the American government can't do anything right. No, this is a way of saying, I want you to spend the same amount of money, but I want you to let me make a giant profit off of it.
Right.
And so, in fact, of course, that means that it won't be the same amount of money. If it costs, let's say, $1 trillion to do all that infrastructure spending, well, when you factor in their profits, it's going to be at least $1.2 trillion or $1.5 trillion. Or maybe they put the upfront cost, but then they put tolls on all those roads and all those bridges, and you pay for the rest of your life, and maybe they put $1 trillion in, but they get $2 trillion out. So why are we doing that? Why don't we just build it and then hire Americans to do that as we've done throughout American history?
Well, I think why Trump ran on that was because it would be popular to increase activity and job activity to push for more infrastructure. Our infrastructure gets a grade of D+. It's embarrassing. It's a national embarrassment, like our healthcare system, like our child care system, our education system, as opposed to a lot of the other industrialized countries in the world. Our infrastructure is incredibly bad. So
well, they're installing steel plates.
And then he decided he was going to contract it out to his buddies.
So,
and people who he
like
was
right now,
with,
it's telling me to go through San Francisco to get to
but that's the kind of approach he's going to take. If he actually ran on giving corporate handouts for infrastructure, I doubt it would have been as popular.
Yeah, and so Barack gives money to Trump. He runs his inaugural committee, so he's done favors for Trump.
I don't know if I should cancel the job tomorrow or what.
He's the president. He's supposed to do favors for us, the American people. So that's the underlying problem with Trump and the corruption, but also, like I said,
it's not going to work to drive there without a bridge.
So all they care about is themselves. And so when they
unless I leave at like 3:30 in the morning.
So this is with no traffic taking an hour
and how do I rip people off
to go through San Francisco?
Friends and people who are giving me favors
right,
back.
the traffic going to San Francisco starts at 6 a.m.
I'd love to. Look, and to be fair, they had a good compromise on criminal justice reform.
So
there isn't a lot of money involved, so I think if I actually get to an agreement,
I would have to wake up at 4
that we pay off
in order to hope to not hit traffic.
No deal. We'll wait till you're out of office, and we'll do real infrastructure
What time do you have to be there?
where Americans are hired, and we build it at an affordable price where we don't get ripped off by corrupt politics.
But lanes could be opened by the morning.
Yes.
Where's this Barack's birth certificate?
Let's just hope that's the situation.
Maybe that's why they couldn't finish the deal at the end. They're like, you know that your friend has a last name that's similar to Barack Obama. He's like, I'm against it. I'm against it. We're done with it.
All right, let's move on.
It kind of seems like it's going to be all or nothing. You know? Like, it's either that driving deck is safe or not.
DC Circuit Court
Yeah.
needs to be
Yeah.
filled.
Well, and it sounded like they're
Trump
doing-
nominated a woman by the name of
they
Naomi
definitely gonna
Brown
have to put some sort of
fill that position.
temporary
Now, she
fix
is
on
currently
it
undergoing
for
Senate
tomorrow.
hearings. The Senate needs to confirm her. we're
And
learning
it said
quite
that they
a
were
bit
trying to get
about
an
her.
emergency contractor to
In
fix it over the
college,
weekend.
A little after college, she had
Okay.
written a number of columns that we had talked about on the
So
show,
So they
where
are
she
fixing
questioned
tomorrow.
whether
Well, it said that they were
a
installing
woman's
steel plates over
sobriety
where
plays
the
a
stuff had
role
fallen.
in her getting
Okay.
raped if she has been a victim of rape.
It didn't say anything though
But
about.
now there are more stories
You
coming
don't
out.
know.
Recently, one
I mean, I could
published in
dig some more and
Intercept
see.
that talks about how she has used her position within the government to essentially stall incredibly important guidance pertaining to sexual harassment in the workplace. Let me give you the details. The Office of Information and Regulatory
dozens of
Affairs,
people
which
are
is
affected by
managed
this
by Naomi Rao, has
school
been
district,
stalling
so
critical employer guidance on
they will be
workplace
fine.
sexual harassment for over a year. So in November of 2017, shortly after the Harvey Weinstein story really blew up, the government got involved. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission delivered the new harassment guidelines to her government agency, the OIRA. But it was it has fallen into a black hole under her leadership. So there hasn't really been any effort to respond to it, to comment on it, to maybe change it to something better. It's just completely stalled. And when you consider what she had written in the past about sexual harassment, about sexual assault, it does not draw a great picture of who she is and how seriously she takes these issues.
Yeah, so as usual, the Intercept doing a great job of reporting here because they explain that this has been held up by her for about 15 months. And my immediate question was, okay, but how long does it take normally to get this kind of guidance circulated through that department? And it turns out the answer is 90 days.
Yep.
And so if it's normally 3 months and this is taking 15 months, well, then you get a fuller context for how much they have held this back. And then they went on to report other facts about it, including why it might be held up. One is, there's two different factors here. One is this office is being used to block a lot of regulations. They don't want regulations, so they just send it into a bureaucracy. And Naomi Rao apparently is being called the deregulation queen by some. Of course, for conservatives, that's such a huge stamp of approval, and that's why she is now getting what could be perceived as a promotion to this incredibly important court, even though she's never been a judge. They're like, oh, you're willing to do whatever corporations want to kill regulations that might help the American people? That's it, you're our person. Let's get you on the court and move you on up. She's in fact now reported as being on the short list for the next Supreme Court nomination for a Republican.
That's
Never been a judge.
Never even been a judge.
She's part of the Federalist Society. Federalist Society has been fighting to get these anti-regulation conservatives onto the Supreme Court. And that's all that really matters. As long as she is active with that organization, conservative politicians will definitely nominate her at some point.
Yeah, this is the natural progression of the conservative philosophy. She does not want government to work. She's been clear about that in her writings at Yale and throughout history. They want government to be deregulated, deconstructed, so that there are not these safeguards in place and standards so that they can protect women in the workplace, so that there can be the variety of these other protections. It's the natural result of their extremist philosophy. And something that also stuck out to me too from this piece was that some of her writings indicated that she wants to give the president a lot of leeway, kind of like the unitary executive theory where the president can do whatever he wants, and that's what she believes is the true version of the Constitution.
Right. Meaning she doesn't believe in the Constitution.
Exactly. But that's what blows my mind is these conservatives say that they're strict constructionists, that they believe in the Founding Fathers and their originalist philosophy. The Founding Fathers were incredibly speculative and afraid of a president being ultra powerful. It is the exact opposite of what she's saying. So conservatives in this day and age are not strict constructionists. They're authoritarians. And she is a person who is manifesting that philosophy, and that's who they want to fill Brett Kavanaugh's seat. I mean, with her writings about sexual assault, you have to think that
And what kills me is I met this teacher for tomorrow, social studies.
Yeah.
High school social studies. Yeah, and I told her, like, yeah, well, you know, feel free to give me stuff that I have to actually, you know, do stuff. You don't have to give them busy work.
Yeah.
And she emailed me earlier today, sent me stuff, which nobody else does.
Well, I mean, what you could do is, you know, wake up at 4, see if the bridge is open. If it's not, go back to sleep. If it is, get up and go.
What time is it now?
7:30. Okay, look, CHP Marin just posted 12 minutes ago, all westbound lanes are open. So waiting to open the rest of eastbound. We'll update when it happens. Okay, but wait, this says 2 minutes ago, then it's, oh gosh.
What the fuck?
This one says developing, some westbound lanes have reopened.
This is not a simple thing for me to fall back asleep again once I've woken up.
I know.
So,
I'm trying to find out information for you, okay? I mean, this is just like a Twitter update from CHP. Okay, this said, hold on. It's 7:36. All lanes have reopened. westbound lanes opened at 7:30. Yeah, which was 9 minutes ago. So.
Well, then. In that case, it's, if there's a total surprise in the morning, then it's really not on me. Yeah, and I'm just gonna, cancel. The bridge fucking collapses, then.
Yeah, they're saying that there's no way, like, the structural integrity is fine that this happens. They have been doing work up there, trying to open up a bike lane, so all of that. They stopped running cable cars in San Francisco due to traffic, so the whole Bay Area has been fucked.
Yeah, it really, like, makes you imagine the impacts of, like, a well-done terrorist attack on a bridge. Like a truck bomb that, like, actually structurally damages the bridge.
Well, I recall growing up, when my parents were still working at doctors, they would say that, if there was an earthquake, we'd have to go all the way around the bay.
Yeah.
To get back to you guys. So we were, like, prepared for, like, being hours, even like a day without them if they were both at work and we were on opposite sides of the bridge.
Because the bridge would collapse during an earthquake, theoretically?
Yeah, if that happened.
Okay, if that happened.
Right, yeah. Because, my mother always thinks the worst doesn't happen. So.
Oh.
There's been a really interesting dynamic going on with them today. The allies have been positively interacting with each other a lot more. And kind of all three of them together on one side or the other of the tank.
So we have $140. $140 a month. And a $200 deposit.
A deposit?
It's not a contract, so I had to put a deposit in for the device.
Well, that's good. I feel like it gives you a little flexibility then with it. Well, I mean, once you sell the car, you'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't work to just do it at home.
Yeah.
See how we got some here.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to think, well, about the limitations of the stream of being outside the house.
Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, I don't know. Not a bad memory about RPA. Celeste and I did connect about the thing of, like, as a trauma response, starting to record everything.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Did you find it helpful?
Necessary. Like, start feeling safe. Can you imagine you have find over a dozen police officers who are like using you, they're all gaslighting you while they're doing it.
It's horrifying.
They're all working your reality simultaneously. Yeah.
It's just stunning.
Yeah.
There's no words.
Yeah, and some of them still are working as police officers.
Yeah. Yeah, and the fact that it's like, you know, these stars who get accused by other stars in Hollywood and stuff, you know, they're having careers ruined and they're, you know, being prosecuted and everything.
Yeah.
But these guys aren't, because Celeste is not seen as
Before you knew.
And that's in no way discounting these other women's experiences. But, you know, it's one thing to feel like your career is threatened if you don't go along with it. It's another thing that, like, your freedom is threatened if you don't go along with it.
Yeah.
That's just a whole other level. It's just... He's just been feisty all day.
He just wants rubs. He doesn't want to bite my nose. Don't lick my face. You can bite my face, but don't lick my face.
That's how you know he really loves you. Try to just take his tongue in your mouth.
The fucking percussion being played by the boys. Shut the fuck up. It's not fucking bang pencils. Your feet. It was so gross. There was one point where after the second recess was over, the teacher invited the kids to breathe deeply and do a breathing exercise. And some of the boys started fucking coughing, like coughing over and over again. It was just like so gross. Like it was it was just like you know, like your teacher is he's a kind man and he's so gentle with all of you, and you're fucking acting like this. It's fucking sick.
I mean,
like that was the most disappointing part of the whole day.
There's a reason that, especially at that age, girls and boys don't like each other.
Yeah.
Because, and it's, who knows if, like, you know, due to societal changes, whatever, but that's cultural, but it's like girls are taught you don't do that, and that's not ladylike.
No, that's not the. So I thought you were going to take it in a different direction, which is that the girls, by and large, are more emotionally mature than the boys, and they're not amused by that bullshit.
No, that's what I'm saying. Though that's why there are girls that will, but like that's girls have their own shit that they act out with, but that kind of stuff is not deemed acceptable. You know, it's not funny because there's always this, you know, to be the prim and proper princess, and princesses are perfect, and you have to be perfect. And boys don't have that. Let's go to bed. I'm already halfway there anyways. Is the stream still on?
Yeah.
Very good. It's gonna make this little skirt thing.
Okay. All right,